everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for stopping by. I hope you are all well. So recently I was looking at my photos that I took from sort of 5-10 years ago, and I'm thinking about things I would have liked to have known then that I could have incorporated into my photography to make better pictures. So I thought, why don't I do a video and I could share some of those things with whoever may be in the same situation I was 5-10 years ago, and maybe have got a bit stuck with their photography and wondering what they could do to try and take their photography to the next level. So I'm going to mention 5 different things that I think if you improve or look at a bit closer, they can help you to take your photography to the next level. Now, this isn't really aimed at complete beginners. This is aimed at people who have been doing photography for a few years and they feel that their level has slightly plateaued and they're wondering how they can take their photography onto that next level. So I hope you find these useful. Anyway, before I get into that, if this is your first time here and at the end of this video you feel it offered something useful or you enjoyed the content, please give me a like, say hi in the comments, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Thanks so much. Anyway, let's get into number 1. So the number 1 thing I did when I really felt my photography start to improve from just a basically intermediate level to something a little bit better, I like to think, was I started being more discerning about my photos. I started hiring my standards and just accepting that I might go out and not get anything. Just because a bird's there and you can get a clear shot, you can get a good shot, the background's not right, the composition's not right, then it's not a shot and you have to move on and try and photograph the same bird again at another time, but with different circumstances. I see a lot of photos posted by non-beginner photographers and I often wonder, why did they post that? I've looked at their other shots and they've got some really good shots, but that particular shot isn't particularly good, but they obviously are really proud of it. And it's often with birds in flight. Now, birds in flight is difficult and a lot of people struggle with it. And I find even relatively good photographers might post a picture of a relatively rare bird or a bird they wanted to get in flight, but the bird is either flying away from them slightly or they haven't got a good eye contact with the bird. And I always think that's not a shot, but because they managed to get a relatively sharp shot and it was in flight, they're happy with it. And I used to do that all the time. I'm not criticizing anybody here. I used to do that. And it suddenly clicked to me, yes, this maybe was a species I'd always wanted to get in flight, but if the bird isn't looking at me and it's not flying in the right direction and the background's not right, then I've got to try again. This was not the wow shot that I was hoping for. So I just started being stricter on myself. I totally appreciate that bird in flight photography is difficult. Getting a sharp shot with lots of feather detail of a bird flying really fast is really difficult, especially swallows and birds of prey and kingfishers. But if you want to get to that next level, you've got to be harder on yourself and you've got to be prepared to say, oh, it's a nice shot, but it's just not quite right. The bird isn't in the position I want it to be. I haven't quite got that eye contact, so it's a miss. And hopefully next time I try, I'll get a better shot. And that's what I started doing. I started binning a lot more shots. So I was certainly getting a lot more particular about certain wing positions in flight, but definitely where the head was and eye was in comparison to where I was. And even if it was just slightly away from me, it's a miss. So if the bird's coming towards you and it gets to where it's parallel with you, once it's beyond that, that's a missed shot. And sometimes you might not see the bird till late and then you only get it into focus just before it's parallel with you and you're like, great. And yes, it might be just past the 45 and it's still a sharp shot and you can kind of see the eye, but unless there's that connection and the bird is actually facing towards you a little bit, it's a missed shot. So be stricter with yourself and challenge yourself to not accept inferior photos. You've got to put a lot of thought into flight shots. You've got to think about where the sun is, where the flight path you think is of the bird, and you've got to position yourself in the correct position. Of course, you get lucky shots where suddenly you see a bird, but they very rarely end up to be your best shots. Get to a place where there might be an osprey and he's occasionally diving in front of you. Think about where the sun is. Think about where the best angle, the best background is. Get into that position and then take your shots from there. Don't just stay where you are and think, oh, this will do. If the bird's not really flying in a good position to where you're staying, move your position. Don't settle for just, oh, this is good enough. Think about where you've got to be to get the best shot possible. Number 2, I would say, is really work on your post-processing, your editing. Try and improve it. I know this is unpopular with some people. You often see on forums and blogs and things, people saying, well, I get it right first time in camera. Editing is cheating, post-processing is cheating. Well, unfortunately, all the top professional photographers use editing. They edit their pictures. No picture that's won any award has ever been straight out of camera. That's just an unfortunate truth. So post-processing is really important. Now, of course, I'm a big advocate of only doing a little bit, getting it as correct as you can when you take the picture, of course, thinking about all the conditions, your composition, your light, how much you want to crop in, get as close to the bird as you can, but you still need to edit it. You still need to control those shadows, those highlights, maybe take some of the noise out, increase the sharpening slightly. And I try to do as minimal as possible, but post-processing is important. And I think being like stuck in the mud and saying, well, I don't need to post-process, I get it right first time, I think is unrealistic. I don't think people should sneer at post-processing. It is an important part of the final image. Try and get a software that suits you, whether that's a free one or a cheap one, and try and improve and learn new techniques as best you can, so you can maximize that picture that you've taken. Of course, that means you need to shoot in RAW, which is essential. JPEGs just won't give you the same quality of picture. A lot of people say, no, I only shoot in JPEG. I'm sorry, that just doesn't work. If you're shooting with any kind of bright sunshine, JPEGs are not going to get you the best results. You've got to shoot in RAW, take it into a RAW conversion software, and then I use Photoshop and Lightroom, but I also use DxO Pure Raw. I also have used Topaz in the past. You might in the field come away with a rough diamond, a shot that you're really happy with. By getting it right in editing, you are shining that diamond up, ready to put it in the shop window. So editing is super important. And there's so much information online, so many videos on YouTube that you can follow step by step. Editing is important. Don't neglect editing. It's a vital tool to making best shots possible. So number 3, really think about your foreground and your background. Just having a bird sharp, maybe on a perch or something, often isn't enough. There are so many pictures online of birds on a stick. Yes, they look nice. Yes, you can see lots of feather detail, but sometimes you want something a bit more interesting because the average viewer has seen so many shots like that. I spend most of my time photographing relatively common birds rather than rare birds. And when I see a bird, a common bird that I've photographed many times before, even if it's right next to me, I can get a super sharp shot. The perch is good. If the background's not right, I will move on. I'll think, I'm seeing that bird again, don't waste your time. Wait until the background is better. Now, sometimes that's not always possible. I understand if you go on a birding trip and you see a bird of a lifetime and you're leaving tomorrow, you're never going to come again, and it's higher up in the tree, you can't get that perfect background. As long as you feel the bird's going to stay there for a while, get a couple of record shots and then try and look whereabouts the bird is in the sky. Is he going to come lower down? If not, look into the branches. Is there some clear background behind the branches? If so, position yourself where the bird might go. He might go onto another branch and there's not a cluttered background on that branch. So always think about how you can get the best possible shot. And having a nice background adds so much to an image. But when I go out to photograph common birds, I'm thinking about what kind of background I want. So I might go to a certain area and I'll think, oh look, there's a field there with some wheat at the moment, which is a nice beige or white yellow color. Or I might go, there's some nice flowers over there. I can get a diffused background of green and the pink flowers. So I think about the background even before I get there. And then if the bird doesn't turn up or go to where I want it, I'll get it next time. And also with the background, I want to try and get eye level with the bird. So here on the beach, I often love shooting shorebirds, and there was actually a Pacific Reef egret here a minute ago. But if I come here and I see a plover in the distance, I'll get as low as possible. I'll think about what I want as that background, get into that position, and I'll wait for the bird to come. If it doesn't come, I get wet and I go home with no picture. But it's also always fun to be out in nature anyway, right? So background and eye level with the bird, they are essential. Never just stand up and tell, oh look, there's a bird, take a picture down. You're never going to get the best shots. You've got to get down and dirty and get eye level with the bird. There's so much more of a connection with the bird when you're eye level with it. And often if the bird is low and you're eye level, it's going to blur out that background anyway. So before, I've had birds higher up than I want in the trees. I'll open my car door, I'll stand next to the seat on my car, and I'll hold the camera, especially if I've got my OM1, which is nice and light. I'll hold the camera above my head, and I'll use the flippy screen to get a little bit more eye level. And you might think that's not going to make much difference, but by the time I'm taking the shot, I'm about a meter difference from where I was standing, and that can make a huge difference. So always think about how you can utilize what gear you've got to get the best background possible and the best shot possible. Always keep thinking, keep pushing yourself, keep challenging yourself. Don't settle for just a 6 out of 10. Try and get an 8 or a 9 out of 10. That's what I try to do. Doesn't always work, but I keep trying. The fourth thing I think is important is it's essential to learn about your subject and the location you're going to. I personally think there's way too much about what kind of gear you wear. You'll see lots of people who swear by wearing camouflage and always wearing muted colours. I've taken some of my best shots wearing garish red or blue, and of course at times it's helpful to wear camouflage, like especially with big mammals. If you want to photograph deer, maybe they're not going to come close to you if you're wearing a blue or red t-shirt. But in terms of birds, I often find if you've done the research previously and you know what kind of birds, you know the type of bird and their behavior, you'll surprise yourself how close you can get. So I often get to a location, I know which birds are going to be at that location, I have studied their behavior because I've probably photographed them many times before, and then I often act in an unthreatening way and I don't get eye contact with the bird. I'll consciously look away and I'll just stay there for 5 or 6 minutes acting like I am not interested, and you'll be amazed how often birds will come really close to you if they think that you are not a threat. Around these fields here, there are farmers everywhere, and sometimes egrets are notoriously skittish. They will walk right up to the farmer if they think he is just minding his own business and doesn't care about them. And I've experienced that with egrets myself, and even small songbirds. Of course there are species that are skittish and nothing changes that, but there are a lot of species that will get pretty close to you. As long as you've studied them, you can tell what their behavior is like and you act like you are not interested. I never wear camouflage, I never really use hides, and yet still I can get pretty close to the birds I want to photograph. It's crucial to know the type of bird that you're going to photograph. Different birds do have different tolerance of humans. Study the bird you want to photograph, see what you think its tolerance is going to be like, and then make plans accordingly. It's very interesting with some birds because some birds will act very different depending on where they are. So here we have this really cool bird called the white-breasted water hen, and here it is so skittish. If it sees you from 50 meters away, it will dash away into the growth and you'll lose it. And I've seen it in other parts of Asia, in Singapore and Malaysia, in public parks, and it will walk right up to you. So here it would be considered a skittish bird. There they're acclimatized to people and they're not skittish. So it's just a question of finding a good location. That's why I often laud parks for photography, because birds are acclimatized to people there. Parks can be fantastic places for taking photos of more common birds. It can't be overemphasized how often the best shots you get are the closer you can get. It's not always possible, but getting as close as you can to the bird does often result in really good results. So yeah, but you don't necessarily need to wear camouflage and hide behind a tree somewhere. I've never done that. So know your subject, know the location. And the fifth thing I'm going to say, which might seem obvious, is practice. Spend hours in the field trying out your gear, trying a camera, trying a lens, trying different focus modes, trying different shutter speeds, different apertures, IS on, IS off, lots of different things. Just keep trying and keep practicing, and that is the best way to improve. I've never had a paid class, I've never had an online class, I'm completely self-taught, and that's just because I've been lucky enough through my job finishing early sometimes that I've put the hours in the field, and that's how I have improved. When I get a new camera, I'm not really interested. I know there's lots of videos on YouTube of people's settings for bird photography with this camera, and people often ask me what settings, what aperture, what shutter speed I use for my photos. And that's maybe something I was interested in maybe 5 years ago in other people's photos, but these days I'm not interested in their settings at all. I'm just more interested in the composition, what the light looks like, and then I'm wondering how they got that shot. And I know a lot of people, and as soon as they get the new camera, they want to watch a YouTube video from their favorite photographer and they want to put in the exact same settings. I get that. It's a way to sort of quickly troubleshoot the camera and see, and I never watch any of those things. I get the camera and I basically try everything myself. I'll start with the settings that I was using on my prior camera, and then I'll just experience every time I go out. And every day is a school day for me. So even, I've been doing this a long time, but I'm always practicing new stuff. I'm always trying new settings. I never settle. If I go to a location and the bird I want to photograph isn't there might be just some pigeons or something. It's not a wasted trip. Try some new settings. Try some different modes for birds in flight. Practice, practice, practice. It's absolutely the main reason that my photography is at the level it is now in comparison to what it was, is because I've practiced and I've made so many mistakes and I've tried to learn from those mistakes. Yes, I've watched stuff on YouTube and taken tips from it. Yes, I've read things on blogs and forums and taken tips from that as well. But basically, I like to try stuff myself. I've often stumbled across things on my own and it's just a lot more organic. And then I feel I can fine tune it to my best needs better than just copying someone else's settings. So yeah, absolutely. Get out there and practice, practice, practice. Certainly for beginners, you'll be amazed. The amount of time you put in the field is totally related to how quickly you'll improve. So that's what I've done. I've put a lot of hours in, and that's why I improve, and I'm still improving, and I'm always trying new things. I never settle on one set. Some YouTubers will say they set A1 to this, A2 to this, A3 to this, and they have their custom settings. Well, I'm always changing mine. I might have a starting point, but I'm always changing it. So I don't tend to do that because I like to take my time in the field and I'll change the settings on the fly. Yes, of course, it is helpful to have something for bird in flight and something for stationary bird in case something quickly happens, but usually I am manually changing my settings all the time because that's how I improve, that's how I learn, that's how I evolve, I think, as a photographer. Anyway, I hope you found that useful. Please say hi in the comments. Let me know if any things that you felt have really helped you improve your photography. Anyway, as I said, if you're new here, please subscribe and take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, take care.